All right, welcome to Mostly Lifting Stuff. Today we're joined by Noah Francis and Evan Conover for the second time, but we are going to do an episode on gut health today. Noah is some sort of expert, so he is going to kind of answer some questions for us and hopefully clarify some things for everybody else. So, welcome, guys.
Thank you, expert. That's your words, not mine. Let that be heard from me first. Not a self-proclaimed expert.
Well, you heard it from me first, so it must be true.
Yeah, thanks for having us back on. I appreciate it. So I don't know if kind of give like preface into this. I don't know if you wanted to go a little bit into like what your background is with the bachelor's you have, and what you're going to school for right now.
Yeah, my background is in psychology, but it's really focused in positive psychology and the interactions between the mind and body and how they interact. And so for most of my research was done in psychoneuroimmunology, and so it's really the interaction between the psychology of a human being, the immunology, and the neurology. And so I did a lot of research and wrote a couple papers on how the effects of alternative behaviors within holistic medicine can impact not only like your microgut biome, but also with your cognitive functioning and your functioning in the gym, but also your functioning outside of all of those things, like in relationships and how you feel intrinsically when you wake up and things on that nature.
And so the biggest thing that jumped out to me when we were talking about it at the gym, I thought it was awesome that you were what your story was and where you were coming from with it. But I genuinely didn't know that there was such a connection between my gut health, my microbiota, and the neurotransmitters in your brain. And so I had to kind of do some research on that because I literally had no idea. And I feel like I'm pretty well versed in nutrition. Like I read a lot of information and try and cover my bases. But I genuinely had no idea. So I figured this would be a great topic to talk about on this because I'm sure there are a lot of us that have no idea that the two are connected so deeply. So a little bit of a background to kind of break down some of the topics. So what is a neurotransmitter and how does the microbiota affect it?
So I think to put it in more like layman's terms, a lot of people are familiar with like dopamine and serotonin and things along those nature, where they've heard these words where they're like, these interact with depression and intrinsic mood and things like that. And so essentially, like if we're speaking about serotonin, there's like serotonin receptors throughout your body. So a lot of people hear neurotransmitters and think that's happening like only like up in your brain. And then you have, it shoots out through like your nervous system, and then you have alternative effects like throughout your body, like with runner's high and things like that. That's endorphins. But the interaction is a lot of serotonin receptors are actually found within your gut. And there's if you think about like Thanksgiving and you eat a lot of turkey, right? Turkey has a lot of tryptophan in it, and tryptophan is an amino acid that you can only get through like through your diet. But after you eat that turkey and you have that tryptophan, that's what actually causes you to have that like, oh my God, I'm so tired after you eat a big meal on Thanksgiving Day. But those chemicals are not just being released like in your gut, like because of what you ate is influencing the distribution through your central nervous system that starts through a neurotransmitter release throughout your body. So that's just like a kind of a simple form of like what you put in your body can actually manipulate different effects and how you feel and like what you want to do, but also how you're going to perform. And so serotonin, this serotonin can pretty much be broken down into falling back into not just your depression and anxiety, but also your cognitive functioning, your performance, how you break down food itself, and how your gut remains healthy or unhealthy depending on your serotonin levels. Serotonin is most closely linked with aggression levels. Like lower serotonin is higher aggression, and and when you have higher serotonin, you have higher social interaction, and those are all linked with depression, but also cognitive functioning when it's higher and everything, kind of like I was saying before.
So to kind of bounce off of that, for people that don't know, typically when people are depressed, they have low serotonin levels in their brain, right? So one way you could help treat somebody who is suffering from depression is potentially manipulating their diet in a way that would release more serotonin or create more serotonin. Is that correct?
Yeah, and so like when you think about antidepressant medication that's on the market, which is typically the what's treated for people with depression, it's focused on neuro or on the serotonin reuptake, and so
SSRIs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's actually a lot of studies, several studies out there that show that serotonin doesn't actually have that big of a correlation with depression in of itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually linked with these alternate interactions with levels of aggression and levels of social interaction. When those two things are linked with depression, when the higher aggression, higher depression, higher social interaction, lower depression kind of thing. And so they are linked kind of through this, like, I guess, scatter plot, but what you eat can directly alternate or can directly impact like your levels of serotonin. So why are we kind of always going back and focusing on the reuptake of serotonin on this foreign substance or this chemical we're putting into our body through this pharmaceutical drug that we don't have many longitudinal studies on, like the effects long term, but we have access to eating right and having a healthy gut and producing higher levels of serotonin in a natural way, but also in a way where it's preventing a lot of these things, where it's not just this, oh shit, I'm depressed, what am I going to do about it?
Right. So do you think it'd be a legitimate way to kind of help someone get through a depression or things like that? Like, not everyone's in the same amount or the same situation, right? So for someone who has crippling depression, right, and they don't have the motivation to get up and get out of bed, I mean, I don't think it'd be the best to say, okay, no medication at all, right? How about what do you think about a combination of manipulating, the mind, body, and spirit in addition to it? What do you think about that?
If I can add to that, do you think, what other, because there's got to be other methods of, increasing these levels. Obviously, the food you intake, but, can other factors in your life, besides your social interaction, can you gain that from other, just, personally, rewarding things? Even if you're doing something by yourself, but it's, a positive thing, are you able to get that same effect? And, can that be kind of used to combat those issues?
Yeah, that's super interesting that you said use the word reward, because serotonin is actually directly linked with your reward system. And so that's why serotonin is kind of the forefront on this topic, is because it can be linked with a lot of different behaviors. And to get to Evan's point, he was talking about integrative health. And that's my passion, actually. That's what I want to go into is performance psychology. So that's really focused on the mind-body interaction, introducing behavior modifications and interventions on people's lives using exercise, using sleep, using nutrition as not just alternative approaches to raising these levels of these neurotransmitters that are shown to really increase your productivity level and really living a life of satisfaction than versus when you don't have these levels, and really complementing them with already instilled approaches in the medical field. So that's using medications, right? But it's kind of focused on creating not just the treatment end of this spectrum, but also on the preventative end, where you're connecting a kind of a Band-Aid treatment for now with a long-term sustainable way of not just staying healthy, but raising your levels of health continual throughout your life.
Because I think along that, when you have a hobby or something, I think that sitting around basically and not doing nothing, not being challenged at all in your life, I feel like those obstacles are what makes it interesting and what keeps you on your toes as far as actively pursuing something. Because I feel if you are stuck in this wormhole where you have a pretty soft life, you're not actively going after anything, I feel your mind will just gravitate towards these negative thoughts because you have nothing that's pushing you forward.
Yeah.
In a given day, I'll probably think about weightlifting for a few hours because just things are on my mind. Like, can I do this better? Can I I'll think about bow hunting. I'll think about shooting my bow. It's by myself. It's something that I'm not doing with anybody else, but it's a challenge. It's rewarding, and you get that kind of satisfaction of knowing you're improving and stuff like that. And I think that a lot of times when people don't have any type of outlet like that where they can challenge themselves, then you start thinking about you get caught up in all your feelings and all I don't have anybody to do anything with, and it is if you're at an apartment by yourself for the weekend, it's wow, this sucks. And I'm sure there's people that are like that, and it leads them down that path. But I think there's lots of ways that they can avoid that.
Yeah, there's also a lot of people that would have an apartment to themselves for the weekend and be like, this is freaking heaven, right?
Right.
And that's the importance, I think, within all these approaches is the focus on the individualization of every treatment or every preventative model that we set up. That means it's not just going to be a one set for everybody. Not everybody is thinking about weightlifting and bow hunting throughout their day, right? That's something that you've connected with a passion. That's something you've connected with reward, and that's something you've connected with this brings fulfillment. So what are those similar, not behaviors, but similar passions and similar challenges and similar things that bring other people for fulfillment, and connecting those dots with them of, I do need challenge in my life, right? That's the state of flow. When you have an equal amount of challenge and an equal amount of skill, and when you match those up together, you're in this spot of I feel like I am producing great work and I feel fulfilled from it. But when you have too much challenge and not enough skill, that creates anxiety, and too much skill and not enough challenge, that creates boredom.
So how can you work with someone and say they're struggling with a lack of challenge? How do you know what this person's going to gravitate towards and be able to link to reward? How can you pick out a hobby for you know what I mean? How can you get someone down that path?
Gotta try and get out there and try different things. That's ultimately what it comes down to. You gotta jump out of your comfort zone, but ultimately what you're getting at is you have to have purpose in life. That's why people can't just be on Social Security from 20 years old and well, I have this, so I can't function, but you need purpose, right? You have to volunteer somewhere. You have to find a hobby, in your case. So you have to find meaning in your work. And that's what will keep you getting up every day to look forward and these challenges. Okay, I have to take care of these things. I need to get this stuff done. You need to find that meaning. And if you don't have that, it's really hard to instill that, but you can try to show them that it's important to have these things. And you have to find what's inspiring to you. Do you like art? Do you like books? Are you a welder? Whatever it is that you like, you have to follow that path and pursue that passion realistically.
Yeah, I don't think that answer. I think this is actually one of the biggest things I'm learning currently, within my time in grad school, is I'm in grad school counseling, and so I'm not here to give you answers within this, right? I'm here to be a helping hand that listens, that helps guide you to the answers you already know. So it's not about me finding that thing that clicks with you. It's about helping you discover what that thing is, and you make that cognitive connection yourself. Because if I make it for you, I'm just handing you this template that you don't have a connection of passion with. It could be something you love, but at the same time, if you don't have that actual cognitive connection of, I'm in the gym lifting these weights for the specific person out for the specific reason outside of aesthetically looking good, then you're not going to have fulfillment and make that connection when you're starting to wake up in the morning feeling better. And so when you don't have that connection and you're feeling better, everything's great and dandy in life, the fitness probably will fall off. And then soon enough, you'll find yourself back kind of in that hole. And I think that's what brings the sustainability within eating right and within exercising. You don't have to be a gym junkie, but exercising regularly throughout the week and getting good sleep is simply because I think there's a need within society for those three things to have a bigger connection with individuals across the masses of the importance of how these affect your mood, how these affect your outlook, how these affect your perspective, how these affect your conversations and your relationships, how it affects your work. And so it's really an individualized approach of helping people kind of make those connections for themselves.
I think the power then of like food and fitness. So like food, I mean, that's kind of universal, right? That's the one tool that's universal. If you can improve that, then you can like increase those levels, like you're saying, of serotonin. And then like fitness, the power of that is that there's so many pathways that like most people can find something within those pathways that they're going to want to get better at and that they enjoy. Like not everyone's going to do the same thing, but I mean, I feel like I could like pick up something totally different at the gym if that was what my heart desired, and like just totally go that way. Like if I wanted to be like Dan, who came on the podcast last week, and do triathlons, like I could see myself doing that. And if I wanted to play softball 5 nights a week, I could see myself doing that too. Like it just, there's so many different ways that you can be active and be in shape that there's pretty much something for everybody, right?
That's why I love your kind of approach to this whole podcast thing. Is it's mostly lifting stuff, but you've had such a vast array of different niches within exercise. We were showing people who are training triathlons. Oh my gosh.
That's a tough word.
Yeah, tongue tied over here. But then you have bodybuilders, you have powerlifters, and then you have power builders.
That's awesome.
And people that incorporate yoga and all this other stuff, where it's not about what's the right way for all. It's about what connects with you.
Right. And that's kind of like what we wanted to do with this, because we're not able to do everything like simultaneously. I mean, I've always heard this joke where like you could try to do powerlifting and bodybuilding, but you're going to be like equally bad at each of them. Like, so I mean, obviously you're most effective if you apply yourself to one thing, but if you enjoy doing multiple things, like that's totally fine too. But we're able to like hear stories, from Evan doing his prep, hear stories from you like overcoming an injury and like really like rediscovering the gym and like being able to get back to it. And we're able to like make connections with that and say, yeah, you know what, maybe that's something I will try down the road. Probably hopefully not the injury thing, but I mean, if we had to, I mean, it'd be inspiring.
But you'd view it as a comeback story, right?
Right.
I think the way you look at it can change everything. It's like, all right, this is an opportunity for me to get my stuff in order, and then I'm going to come back twice as strong. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's the attitude you have to have, especially going into the gym. But it's not easy for someone necessarily who's maybe not in the best spot. So you kind of have to create that nurturing environment, and therapy especially is a place for people to be relaxed, and you want them to be able to feel like they can be vulnerable, because that's when they're going to grow and get the most out of it, is if they're able to take themselves to that place. And then once they start taking those steps, and hopefully I love the idea of incorporating both a diet and nutrition as well as fitness in addition to the to medications, because I feel like especially in this day and age, people don't want to take the time to get better. They say, okay, you have to do all this hard work and everything in the gym, but you will feel better, or you can take this pill and it'll kind of numb everything. And I feel like that's a lot of the times just people just take the easy route. And I wanted to get this message out, and I wanted people to hear about how this can be integrated into the health system today. So especially as a nursing student, as Austin and I are both nursing students, like I wanted to learn more about this so I can incorporate it and hopefully educate some of the patients I'm going to see, because it usually is a comorbidity. A lot of these people that I'm going to be seeing, they're going to be diagnosed with whatever the reason they're in there, but I can also see in the history that they have a history of depression and things like that. So I'd like to be able to take some of this information and integrate it into my own life, and hopefully for some of the listeners, they can get this and get something out of it as well.
I love that you just said education, because I think that's the big roadblock here, is so many people are not educated in exercise. They feel so like they're on an island when they walk into a gym, and that creates a lot of self-doubt, which can be a huge roadblock to even being sustainable within the gym. And with nutrition, so many people, there's so much out there that people are telling you, this is the route, you shouldn't eat this, you should eat that, and really you're kind of getting all of this contradictory knowledge thrown at you from these quote-unquote experts, and it's just causing even more of a headache for you, more of a I don't know what to do, so I'm kind of going to take the quick route because that's what's accessible to me, because I know that this is going to show, I'm told at least from an actual doctor, that this is going to be beneficial for me.
Yeah, like if anything comes of this podcast, like if there were one person that were to make a connection with what somebody said on here and like be willing to step out of their comfort zone and like try to experience something new, then it would totally serve its purpose for however many episodes we do it for. If just one person could have it make a difference for them because they heard about something and they thought, wow, that's really exciting, and they had the courage to try it. Like that's what really it comes down to. Like, yeah, we're trying to learn stuff, but if people listening can get something out of it that's even greater, like that just totally like provides it with purpose, I guess.
Yeah, and it's connecting that purpose with that individual. And I know for me, when I first was getting back into the gym after 4 years off of, you can say, recovering from this injury, but also letting this injury kind of win over the direction of my rest of my life, was a lot of that self-criticism and that self-doubt. And if I walked into a room with the three of you guys and saw myself, I'd be like, those guys are gym guys. Like, they know what they're doing. And so I'm going to kind of take a back seat in the corner. And that keeps people away from really even discovering and becoming more educated, and especially the exercise and nutrition levels, because their perspective is skewed. Their perspective is, what are they thinking about me?
Right.
How do I pair up to their lifts? How do I pair up to their aesthetics? And for me, it was really just like a swallowing of the pride of walking back in and understanding that the reason why I'm doing this, the reason why I'm sweating today, that was originally the only goal, sweat today so that I'm setting myself up for greater success today and feeling better, but also tomorrow I can hit new levels of breaking down barriers. And when I continue to break down barriers every day, you're breaking down bigger barriers every month, every season, and every year. I know if I scale back just the perspective of like the last year on breaking down barriers and goals, I'm doing things that I was told by doctors I'd never do again in my life. Not only just doing them, like continuing to gain strength within them and feeling stronger than I ever have. And that never would have happened if I kept going into the gym and seeing what I couldn't do, but rather than having the perspective shift of going to the gym and seeing what I was in control of and what I could do. So perspective and the way you approach things is such a key element to not just hitting goals, but sustaining and continual growth throughout life.
Yeah, and I think that perspective of going to the gym and like feeling intimidated, I think a lot of people experience that. And I think being at Oakland, like that is like probably the perfect place for someone to start though. You know, you have a college gym, which is where a lot of people really start.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone there has been lifting for students have been lifting for a max of probably like 5 to 10 years. Like nobody is so experienced that they're, you know, next level or something, or, you know, just like out there. But I think a lot of people will see somebody who is really focused on their craft and really into what they're doing, and they'll feel overwhelmed because they're worried they're going to get judged. They're worried they're going to be, you know, kind of like looked down upon. And I think that's where like the whole Planet Fitness mold comes from, right? Is like we will take away what enables the more experienced people to be here, so that it's just, you know, not just rookies, but mainly rookies.
Yeah.
So that's like their safe space. But I think what people fail to realize is like I've never had somebody ask me for help that I wasn't excited to help. And like I'm sure you guys can speak to that too.
Absolutely. I've helped every single person that's ever asked me for anything. Like I think that's everyone has this like mindset that they think everyone's going to be rude to them or disrespectful, and it's like every lifter I know has always been like, oh, of course I'll help you. Yeah, what are we working on? What are you trying to work? You want me to just spot you on your squat or your bench, or, you know, just a pointer here and there, or talk about diet briefly? Like, I mean, unless they're like super intense and doing like circuit work, or they're like into the workout, most people can take 5 minutes out of whatever their day is and help you out. I mean, I know I've done that. I know you've done that, and I'm sure you two have done that as well.
I take it, it's like more of a compliment than anything.
Absolutely.
If someone asks you, you know. I know I get a good feeling. It's like, oh, well, they think I'm doing something right, which I'm not doing anything right anyways, let's be honest. But I'll try my best, you know what I mean? So.
Well, I know, like, our freshman year here, you were, like a little more, like, hesitant to be getting into it. And
Oh, yeah, dude. I was anti-gym.
Why was that?
In high school, I thought it was a waste of time because I was, like, skinny. So I was like, oh, well, you know, it's going to take forever anyways. And then when I came here, it was, like, the whole I'm scared to go here because everyone's A, looking at me, B, I'm not big, and C, like, it's gonna take years, so like what's the point? But I don't know. I mean, we kind of like you started going like daily or whatever, and you'd kind of always ask, and so I think I kind of felt better going with you, like with somebody. But it was like I would not go alone.
Yeah.
Just because it was like, you know, like you said, it is scary because you've never been there before. You got all these big people doing things like that look right to you. You know what I mean?
The best thing you can do too, if you've been doing it for a while, is if you can find an old video of yourself lifting. I don't care who you are or how long you've been lifting, you're gonna cringe about something.
We just did that the other day. We're looking at your videos. Right?
Yeah. I found a deadlift video that was probably like a year old when they were remodeling the gym.
Yeah.
And like it's just like, oh, like why was I doing that?
Look at your back. Oh,
and it's like, right? It's like
we used to talk about that all the time.
Yeah. And I found a squat video from my sophomore or freshman year here, and it was like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? And it's like that just like you adapt and you become smarter, and like everyone starts from somewhere though.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Everybody starts benching the bar, you know, when they're however old or when they're learning the technique. Like if you're benching the bar and you're next to someone who's benching 400 pounds, they're not going to look down on you. That's like making fun of like a homeless person who's looking for a job. Like they're not, you know, you're trying to improve your situation, so people aren't going to look down on you for that.
I've always thought that perspective is so interesting, but also so oriented to everybody, right? When you're walking, you're like, everybody is looking at me. Everybody can see that I'm
no one cares.
Right?
Literally no one gives a crap
But
about
then
anything else but themselves.
If you flip that, right, who are you looking at and judging? You're not, right? And so everyone's kind of in the same shoe as you, and they're not like so worried about what everyone else is thinking about yourself, but you're really like, wow, that guy looks like he's doing really good over there. Someone's thinking that exact same thing about you, right? And I think that is such an interesting thing about like the human psychology, that we all kind of have the most negative thoughts about. Think everyone's thinking negatively about us, and we think positively about everybody else. But if we get the assumption that everyone's thinking positively about ourselves, thinking about the motivation and the relationships you can build that way, when you just shift from negative to positive.
So Austin, what would you say the biggest mind shift or the change in your perspective was, and when did it happen for you when you started getting into it? Because I feel like if you see someone squatting or deadlifting now, it's more motivating than it is intimidating. You're like, that's awesome, I'm about to get after whatever I'm doing.
Yeah. It probably took me like a year or so of like consistently going to where I felt comfortable with thinking like, okay, I'm here for myself. I'm going to be proud of what I do today. And I'm not going to worry about what other people are doing or like thinking, or like you said, if they're doing a lot of weight, like, okay, like I'm going to go and do what a lot of weight is for me. Mm-hmm. So I think that took a while. Just because, you know, back to, you know, being nervous to be there and all that kind of stuff. But it was always nice for me. I still notice, like, even now, when I go alone, I don't think I have as good of workouts. But, like, going with somebody has just been, like, my biggest way to get over hurdles and better myself. So,
how much would you say that was tied to your self-esteem?
Probably quite a bit. Mm-hmm. I mean... I'm definitely not like the biggest kid, but I like how I look now compared to how I looked then. Mm-hmm. So I think my confidence, you know, definitely shot up.
Rose after you were going.
Yeah, but that was, you know, back on me from not even trying from the start. Right. I kind of just assumed, you know, we're gonna be skinny for life, so like whatever. But
athletic, but skinny.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I don't know. I think that's when it kind of changed. When I was like, well, it takes a long time. We've talked about this hundreds of times. It takes a long time to make change, but when you go and look back, I mean, I can look back a year from now and think, wow, you know, you made leaps and bounds and you don't even really notice. You kind of just, you're going and you're getting better. So I think, once my confidence in myself and not worrying about others and what they thought, then that's when I felt better.
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
going and whatnot.
I feel like almost all of us, well, I can't speak for everybody, but I think all of us started to some extent working out or lifting, whether it be for getting better at sports and being more athletic, but also just to have more self-esteem. It feels you get to feel a little bit better about yourself. You have a little bit more self-confidence. I feel like in a fair dose, like that's fine. Obviously, narcissism isn't the best thing in the world. You can take it too far.
Yeah.
But having confidence in yourself is a great thing, and it's a great tool. And a lot of problems in people's lives can be tied back, I think, to self-esteem.
Yeah. Question for you.
Yeah.
So we talked about this in class with our professor the other day. She was talking about a narcissist. At what point, or do you think there is a point to where self-confidence it goes over the line?
It supersedes. It goes over the top.
Into
and it crosses
narcissism.
into a negative characteristic trait.
Yeah, I think it's intention in the behavior. I think that's across the line with pretty much anything in life. Is what's your intention behind this behavior? Is it intention rooted in a selfish pleasure, or is it an intention rooted in an altruistic form of giving? Right. So friendships, relationships, whatever it is, I think the more benefit comes from long term comes from when you're focused on helping others, or you're focused on doing something selflessly rather than selfishly. And I think especially in the gym, there is I think from outside looking in, there's probably a very skewed perspective of how people are just there to look aesthetically as pleasing as they are. It's all about them, looking in the mirror, flexing and things and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with being in the gym and being very good looking and aesthetically pleasing and bodybuilding, right? There's nothing wrong with bodybuilding. But when the intention behind bodybuilding is how you can put yourself above everybody else in the world through a selfish pleasure, than rather giving yourself a platform so you can impact others in a positive way, then that really has become a really unhealthy, narcissistic way of living your life. And I think I can't think of any studies that I've read, but I have a strong suspicion that if we went and researched this, and we researched narcissism and life satisfaction and narcissism and actually just longevity of life, they would be substantially lower than somebody living a life of selfless gain.
Right. It's kind of empty at the end of the tunnel, right? You're doing this just to look good, and then to get women or whatever else it is, and then it's okay, you're with a different person every week. I mean, maybe that makes you happy for some period of time, but ultimately that's not going to lead to happiness. It's going to leave you with emptiness.
Yeah. Life satisfaction is something that I kind of find I always go back to. It's something that's really rooted in positive psychology, because it's something that can be measured, but also something that can be measured from momentary, you could say happiness, or that's really pleasure, right? Versus actual lifelong life satisfaction. And there's a lot of pain within life satisfaction throughout life, and there's very little pain when you're talking about pleasure. And go back what Garrett was talking about earlier with challenge and really growth as an individual. In the gym, there's going to be a lot of days of pain. There's going to be a lot of days of failure, and in that moment, that's not bringing you bliss, right? It's not bringing you oh, I'm so happy I missed that lift.
Yeah.
It's kind of using that, having grit, instilling coping mechanisms, and growing from there. And actually, the path of struggle and the path of failure is what brings that long form of life satisfaction.
It's finally succeeding after trying for so long. It's that much more rewarding, right? You have to work for something in life, and that's what gives it meaning. You're working, eventually you're going to get your PhD, right? Is that what it is? So if you are able to just do it in a year and it's over with, whatever, would it really be as rewarding as if, I spent, all this time in the lab, writing all these, synthesizing all these articles, putting all this time, integrating all this? It just wouldn't be as fulfilling to you if you got this tomorrow and they just hand it to you, say, here you go, okay, go ahead, here's your doctor, here's your coat, whatever it is.
Right.
You know what I mean?
What is it worth at that point? It's
right.
kind of
Who cares? Anybody could do it.
If I was Aladdin, had a genie, and I had a wish, and I was 35% body fat, and my wish was I want to be a bodybuilder and have 8% body fat and just be shredded out of my mind. And then you get that in that moment. what does that actually mean to you? That's not going to bring you long-term fulfillment or pleasure or anything. It's really going to be nothing because it's worthless because there was no actual work involved in maintaining it or achieving it.
I think to go back a little bit with what you're talking about, like the narcissists and like people who, like, I don't know, if you were to look at like a chart of like self-confidence and then like your ability to maintain like human relationships, I think some of the most like outwardly successful people are those people that are beyond the point of being able to maintain a large number of like personal relationships, because they are so like they're so self-confident in what they are and what they're doing that they are so beyond listening to what anybody else has to say.
Yeah.
Like I see it with a lot of like some of the powerlifters I follow, where it's like, I mean, they're kind of assholes, but it's like that's what works for them because it's almost like the mentality of like a UFC fighter. Are you gonna ever talk to a UFC fighter and you ever hear them say, "Yeah, I'm like the second best in the world"?
Right.
Those guys, I'm the best. That guy sucks. That's always like what you hear. It's like that mentality though, because they are so self-confident that they are just honed in on what they're doing and what their goals are, but they're beyond the point of being able to maintain relationships with people because they're almost like they're kind of out there.
Yeah, you lose reality, right?
And like to other people, it's like, wow, this guy is so successful, but what level of happiness does that person have? Say they get hurt. Now what do they do? Say this one thing that they have that is their number one goal, this number one target. What if that's gone? Like, what do they have now? Because you were so focused on this one thing, you let the rest of your life kind of slip away because you didn't care what anybody else thought.
Yeah, that's actually the difference between like a reward and something that is like living for reward versus living with a purpose. So if my purpose in life is to get this reward, get this sum of money, or get this job title, you're ever searching for that thing, and when you get it, and you find out it doesn't bring you that big hole that you've been searching for, versus living a life where that action, the behavior behind the goal is actually what brings the fulfillment. When you hit that goal, you're not dependent on that reward or dependent on that job title to be successful in your own eyes. And I think narcissism, you lose a grasp of reality, right? You lose a grasp of, I can learn from everybody in this room. I think what's so interesting about this room right now is that we have 4 guys who are all experts in such a vast array of subjects, right? We have 2 guys in the nursing program and have intrinsic helping motivations behind that, and also they are into fitness and stuff like that, but they also have their own experiences within that bring their own expertise from that experience that they've lived. And then you have you, who's more of a power lifter but also an engineer and has more of like a problem solving mentality with analytical thinking. And then you have someone else that's completely different than all of those, who's more of an abstract thinker, right? And it's also in the helping field, but in a very different way within the helping field. And then when you have a conversation like this, you obtain or you unlock something that is unobtainable when you're just by yourself, right? That's community. That's learning from everybody around you. Like, you could be the strongest guy in this room, whoever that is. I don't know. I'm going to say it's not me.
Bye, Evan.
No, definitely. I mean, maybe I'm like shoulder press. Like maybe I got you on that one, but that's it.
Old man strength.
Yeah. But every single person, no matter if you're the strongest one in this room, like, you can learn from every other individual in this room. And if you lose the reality of that, then I think that's dangerously close to living a life full of narcissism. And even those UFC fighters, and I think of Conor McGregor, right?
Yeah.
He definitely thinks he's the best in the world, but also you have to have that mentality, but also be able to work with other people to continue to learn. I think he does that so well. He's humble in defeat, but also he surrounds himself with coaches. Mm-hmm. And if you think you're the best in the world, why the heck do you need a coach? You see that with powerlifters too. Like, you surround yourself with not only the people that have got you where you are, but are continuing to build you up.
Right. And I think a lot of people, the people that are the best at what they do. I was just reading about a hockey player the other day. I forget his name. He played in the Rangers. Like, really like hated guy around like the league, but he created this persona when he was on the ice that he wanted people to hate him because that's what drove him. That's not the person he was when he stepped off the ice.
Yeah.
But that was his way of, I'm the greatest. Like that was his way of getting that fighter's mentality that drove him to do well in what he did. But you have that separation, like I'm not the same person 2 seconds before a deadlift that I am when I'm hanging out with Rachel and we're watching a movie or something. Like you need to have that separation. Like you can't just be that person.
It's a motivator. It's a driver, right?
Right. You need to have, that mental state where you can go into something and be super intense about it, but then you can also dial it back. Because if you can't dial it back, that's when you get stuck and you lose reality and your
spirals.
Your oxygen is basically ammonia at that point.
There's time and place, essentially, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
For a lot of these attributes, and if that time and place gets misplaced, where you're kind of walking around with that same mentality of I'm the best in the world at this one thing, and you now are saying you're the best in the world at everything and screw everybody, and you're gonna defeat them in whatever the hell it is. Well, you're kind of gonna fail at a lot of things because it's not true. It's not the time nor the place.
Right.
Interesting. So we'll kind of piggyback off of the narcissism and go a little bit further into that, and I feel like it'd be interesting to get your take on like social media and how it's affecting people, in today, because everyone has it, right? A lot of people have Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and everything, but I think the biggest thing right now is Instagram, especially in the fitness culture. They're constantly posting pictures, men and women. It's not one gender, it's everybody.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people put their self-worth on how much interaction they're getting from their quote-unquote followers on these sites. It's like a hit of dopamine every single time they get it, and they're like, oh, this one got the most likes I've ever had, so this must be a good one, and then they're constantly chasing that, and then they amount their self-worth to how many followers they have or how much interaction they have. So what is your take on social media right now?
I think you hit the complexity of it, right? You actually do get a hit of dopamine when that's like instant gratification of a like, and there's a lot of research behind that. It's such a complex thing because Instagram isn't bad in nature, right? It's not this thing that's tearing people down, tearing individuals down, tearing society down. It's actually a beautiful platform that is allowing these new platforms for people to be successful in ways we've never been successful for before. Like a lot of small businesses, a lot of these athletes that are called athletes that 10 years ago wouldn't be considered an athlete. They'd just be considered someone in the gym. But now their whole life is living a life of passion, and they're able to make money and a life for themselves through fitness that wasn't available before, all because of social media. And so I think that's a really awesome and beautiful thing. But the intention behind it is kind of what you're getting at. And again, that intention of behavior, why am I doing this? Why am I here? Why do I need this like? And when you become dependent on that like, that really switches from something really beautiful and really this brand new model that is causing a lot of success is actually going to be my downfall as an individual. And it's really trying to like keep checks and balances within your life of keeping that realistic point of view of, is my self-worth completely dependent on how many likes I get or how many followers I have? Or is it that I would think that's more like a negative approach or a positive approach of, do I have a platform, how am I going to positively impact somebody? Because you could have someone with 1 million followers and someone with 1 million followers, and you can look at how that social media affects their life, and I think you can have someone that social media negatively affects their life in a huge way, or can positively affect their life in a huge way. It's really like, what's the intention behind it? Am I here to help other people and do something with this platform, or am I here for a selfish gain of, I need your attention, I need your like, and if I don't get it, then I am now dependent on it and I'm kind of lost.
Right.
I think there's also way too much deceit, though. I think that yeah, it's a good tool if you're looking for like motivation. There's a lot of ways you can get motivated by going to Instagram because there's people that are doing awesome things. But at the same time, you don't see like the ugly part of it. You don't see
It's not the whole person.
You don't see the person that's, sitting on Photoshop for 20 minutes before they post a picture.
Yeah.
And you don't see the guy that's, natural in his bio, but he's not really natural. Like, you don't see that. And so this platform becomes this tool where people set unrealistic expectations for themselves because they are looking to do something that they're misled into believing is achievable with what they're seeing this other person do.
Yeah, it's kind of like a facade of social marketing.
Yeah.
I'm marketing myself and creating this ideal or this idea of who you think I am versus the reality of who you are. I think we've seen this I think we've always seen this in a lot of societies, like when we were growing up, right? There's marketing all around us, like the movies we watched growing up, right? It's creating this ideal of who a man should be or who a girl should grow up to be and stuff like that, right? And social media, I think, is a direct correlation with that of this is who I'm supposed to be or who I want you to think I am, but in actuality, I'm something very different. And I think that does something on the individual level of the person behind posting those pictures, but also on the person receiving those pictures, you're doing a very misjustice to their own self-worth of who they can become because you set up that very fake, unrealistic, very fake facade of who that person can be. Like if you say you're natty in your bio and you're really not, well, guess what? Now you're setting guys up to be natty and do all this weightlifting and follow all the rules and all the steps and
buy all your products.
Yeah, buy all your products and then never see the results. Yeah. And then they lose motivation, they lose passion, and now they have a really bad, poor experience, and they're kind of have a negative affect towards it. And later in their life, they're kind of like find themselves obese with eating disorders and things like that, simply because of their negative experience they had through you.
Right. Because
you set up a fake ideal that's not obtainable or achievable.
You sold them a lie, more or less.
Yeah.
All right. An example that I think of is, you guys know who David Lade is? Gymshark athlete?
Yep.
Okay, so this guy posts videos of, at least he used to. I don't follow him anymore. He used to post videos of, hitting PRs, twice a week. And a friend of mine, and I mean, this guy is, super athletic, he's in fantastic shape. He's put on an amazing amount of muscle. He's really strong. And, a friend of mine was like, oh, dude, we should get his program. And I'm like, I don't know, dude. I was like, I mean, the writing's on the wall. This kid doesn't eat that well. We were watching videos, and it was somebody else was talking about their experience with him. Yeah, he doesn't eat. He hardly sleeps, but yet he's putting on this muscle. I'm like, dude, this is the red flags. You can't follow the same programming as this person. You're not going to get results. And a friend of his got the program, and he sent it to me. So I looked at it, and it was all right, you're lifting 6 days a week. You're doing of your main list, you're doing over 90%, at least once a day. I'm like, dude, you're gonna tear yourself apart.
It's just not gonna tolerate that,
right? Yeah. And then you see these pictures that this guy posts, this David Lade, and then you find out a video from a guy that was with him working out one time. He's we went in the locker room afterwards, and he's doing dips and push-ups in the locker room for half an hour, and he's taking hundreds of pictures just to get that one that's going on social media. And it's this is what people they don't see that side of it though. Mm-hmm. They don't see him sticking that needle in his butt before he's doing these programs, because no natural person is going to be able to lift like that 6 days a week. You would fall apart, and you're going to fall apart. You're probably going to fall apart anyways, even if you're not natural.
Right. Your joints just can't tolerate that.
Right. But it creates this belief that this is achievable because this person is claiming to have done it. And there's so many people that will fall into that because they don't have that, those glasses on where they see everything for what it is. They don't see through that kind of fake front that people are putting up.
And I think we obviously are kind of circling around this really big issue within social media, but also I think none of us have the ability or have the answer to how to fix that, except when you take it out of the more macro perspective and put it on the micro. And so I think on the individual, we can talk about like the responsibility of the intentions of working out, right? So my intentions of working out never have been, okay, I want to be that, like we talked about when I was on the podcast before, like I'm not training to be the strongest guy in the gym. I'm not training to be competing on a powerlifting stage. I'm not training to be on a bodybuilding stage. I'm training because I made the connections between how I train and how I feel, how I train and how I do in school, how I train and how my relationships are with friends and family, and also like my passions in life and where I want to go. And it helps when I wake up in the morning, I'm motivated. Am I motivated because I got 150 likes on that last picture? No, I'm motivated because of the actual work I put in the day before and the food I put in my body the day before and the amount of water I drank the day before, right? Sets me up to wake up, feel motivated, feel ready to go, and then be able to do that same thing, respect all that hard work I did yesterday, put in hard work today, so I'm respecting like to my tomorrow. And so all this like a slow, like gradual staircase of you get better and you get better and you get better and you get better. And so I don't care what that guy looks like on Instagram or what he's trying to sell me, because I'm not here to become that guy. I'm here kind of like, okay, I'll use like the good tools. Like I find a few people that I really respect, which is like a Jeff Nippard, right? He literally brings up research in all of his videos to show why you're doing these lifts with this other lift, or what forms or techniques like work best and what science shows produces the best result. Like those things I really like to follow pretty much religiously, because I get really good content from them, because it helps me obtain like better results, not just in the gym, but also because it's connected outside the gym. I'm getting better results in my sleep. I'm getting better results in my productivity and better results like in my cognitive functioning throughout the day. And so really I think the intention of like why you're going to those people, are you again trying to be that person that you'll never become, or are you trying to be the better you?
Right, so I think that's safe to say that you have a high amount of self-confidence and you're comfortable with who you are, that when you walk into the gym you don't feel like you need to be deadlifting the most or squatting the most, because you're comfortable with where you are. You're competing against yourself. Mm-hmm. So how do you help someone who isn't at that point, right, who are very much in that cycle of I need to have the most, so I need to have the most likes, or otherwise I'm not beautiful, or I'm not hot, or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve by doing this. Again, I know you're talking about intention, but how do we help people who might not necessarily have that self-confidence and aren't willing to really go through that yet? You know what I'm saying?
If I could chime in.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I think confidence in the decisions you make is the biggest. I think that's like the biggest thing for like making decisions that like you're totally behind. I think that just slowly chips away at that self-doubt. Like if you know you're doing what you're supposed to do, like for example, I forget who it was, somebody came up to me and we were talking about how I got engaged. And they're like, man, that's like exciting. Like, are you nervous? Like, how do you feel about it? I'm like, I'm totally happy with it. I have like no like nervousness, nothing like that, because I know I made the right decision. And when you are constantly doing that, whether it's, you drank enough water, you ate the right foods, you did the right workout at the gym, you didn't try to do too much, or you trained it in a good way. I think those decisions just become like stepping stones, and you're building your self-confidence just by doing little things. Like you don't have to go in and hit a big PR every time, or like, because like that was me before. I was like, oh, like if I want to justify like what I'm doing here, I need to show that I'm getting stronger, and I need to like do that outwardly by deadlifting more or whatever. But like now it's like you learn to trust the process because you're confident in the decisions that you're making on a day-to-day basis, and you're confident those are getting you towards your goals. I think that's the biggest thing. Not like like the PR is like like a PR at the gym, or like a PR in life, I guess you could call it. That's like a spot along the road, but the steps are really what I think will build you up to that point and make you feel like you are, your self-worth is good. Like,
so you're saying by taking these steps and making sure all these tasks are in order and that you're on top of things, you're going to build your self-confidence through that means.
Yeah, because like the meat day, of your life. Like, it's not like at the wedding, it's not going to be like, oh yeah, like I'm good with my decision. Like I'm not going to be like happy with it at the wedding. It's like that's part of, the steps you take and the planning you do and everything. But like that's the part of it that should drive the self-confidence and drive the happiness with your decisions.
Right.
Yeah. And I think you've spoken directly into the importance of experience yourself and failure yourself and figuring something out for yourself. I believe this because I lived this, and this is what I've gained from that experience. So like within the gym, I don't think it's just like quick, like, all right, you're in here for the wrong reasons, here's the solution, right? I don't have the solution for you. All I can do is have conversations like these with you. Like, what makes you feel like you need to be the strongest person in this gym to be worth something, right? That's something that's probably going to be done more in like a therapeutic setting,
right?
But it's something that I'm really interested in bringing separate, I guess you could call them separate entities as of today. You see the gym as something very different from a therapy session.
Yeah.
Right? And they are very different things, but they also can be very complementary things.
Yeah, they both serve their purpose, right?
Yeah. And that's kind of what I want to do in the future is integrate several different modalities together. But it's not about me giving you the solution. It's about me helping you figure out the solution for yourself through failure and through experience. Because I can tell you about an experience I've had myself, but guess what? There's no connection there for yourself because you've never felt that same like pain. There's a difference between talking about pain and feeling that pain. This is probably a weird example to bring up on a podcast called Mostly Lifting Stuff, but Mary Poppins is such a good example for this, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Mary Poppins, but she has the answers. She can fix all the problems for the kids at any moment. But guess what? She doesn't. She helps guide the kids of work through failures and show them that they are capable. Not because that she gives them the answer, but because they've worked through the problem themselves. They figure out the solution for themselves. So now it's something they can do for the rest of their life. I think it's the same thing that we can do as individuals within the gym, as people in separate helping fields, that we are here to help you make cognitive steps towards solutions for yourself, and that you are capable of doing this. You are capable of being worthy, even though you'll never hit a 800-pound deadlift, right? I don't need that to feel worthy. I don't need to be the strongest guy in this room to know that I'm worthy. So it's not. I don't think it's about like having the solution for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about that a little bit the other day, just joking around. You were messaging me about something and said, something about being the strongest person in the gym. Like we always joke around about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like, and I said back, and I was like, I meant it, but I was like, kind of going along with your joke.
You just joking
yeah,
around.
I just
Right,
said
yeah.
like, I'm more concerned about being the strongest version of me, which is what people really need to do. Like your happiness, like say for example, strength. Your happiness shouldn't hinge on if somebody walks through the door and it's like, oh, here's a new member at the gym and he's benching for like 500 pounds. It's like, okay, well, your happiness for being the strongest person in the gym shouldn't hinge on somebody else coming in. Like,
Yeah.
it should be about
Right.
what you're doing. I think it was so funny. We went to Retro over midwinter or like spring break or whatever it was, and it's like there's a guy in there that was benching almost 500 pounds for reps. And
That's incredible.
Like
He was a big boy.
I made the joke to Austin. I was like, "Well, I'm gonna sell all my stuff and like," but like,
That's enough of that.
yeah, but like just seeing that guy, it's like awesome. You're like, wow, like that's motivating to see like what so much time and effort can do. That shouldn't be like discouraging.
A deterrent.
It
That's
shouldn't
what
be.
I'm saying. It's about perspective when you're going into it. When you see stuff like that, like to me, that's super motivating. Like, if you're trying to get hyped before a workout, like I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but you look up like one of your favorite powerlifters and bodybuilders training whatever like you're about to go do, and you're like you see the intensity they're bringing to their workout, and you're like, okay, I need to try and capture that and bring that with me, and I'm about to destroy this workout. Like that's what I try and do. I try to emulate that. Like to me, that's super incredibly motivating.
Mm-hmm.
I don't find that as discouraging at all.
Right. So how do you bring that? This is going to be a nice segue, by the way. How do you bring that into nutrition and back to your gut health? Like,
Boom.
how do you bring, like, what you can do and like your competitive nature and like being like motivated, how do you bring that to nutrition? Because nutrition is the easiest thing in the world to stray away from, I think.
Yeah.
As far as like goals. Sure. Like for like lifting weights, you go to the gym, you lift the weights, it's fun, you hang out with your buddies a little bit, you go home, and it's like, all right, now if you're going to be motivated and you're going to want to reach your goals, you need to do the right things in the kitchen. And that is so tough for everyone because like sugar's like a drug.
It
is.
is.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, you know, these things that make you happy in the moment when they're in when they're in your mouth, you know, like pancakes or something with a bunch of syrup on them. I could smash me some pancakes any day, but does that align with my goals? And like, am I motivated to do that, or am I giving it to myself as a reward when I don't need to be rewarded for getting up on Thursday morning before class at 10? Like,
yeah.
How do you incorporate that so that you can take that next step in like making those little steps towards your goal that are so rewarding?
I think it falls right in line with a lot of things that we've talked about tonight, which is intention, but also the dependency on external versus internal. And so a lot of, I would think, people that go into a nutritional approach, have a nutritional goal, and they're getting that motivation externally, they're a lot more likely to never hit that goal. They're a lot more likely to not just not hit that goal, but fall back further than where they started because they failed. And there's shame within that failure. Versus someone who's intrinsically motivated to hit this goal is a lot more likely to hit the goal. And that intrinsic motivation isn't just because I want to do this because I want to do this. It's making those actual cognitive connections and interactions with the food you're putting in your body versus the output that you are now having. There's a difference between the way I feel and the difference between eating this way and being on this quote-unquote diet or whatever your nutritional goal is versus when I'm not. And I think that's the number on the scale is such a hard thing to work with people because a lot of times they want to hit this number. Yeah. And I think that's a good approach at the beginning, but also it should really be dependent on how you feel. Yeah. And have an optimum functioning perspective. And so to implement goals, right, a lot of, I think, so like in the counseling field, when you're implementing goals with clients, you use this SMART platform, right? You have to make a specific goal, specific long-term goal. Then you have micro goals under it. So it's got to be specific, it has to be measurable, it has to be obtainable, it has to be realistic, it has to be timely, right? So you can measure it. And so it's kind of like a guideline so that we can set up something that you have a long-term goal, right? An overarching thing, and then have a couple different micro goals within it that allow you to make that long-term goal obtainable. And I think a lot of people go into it not having a SMART platform whatsoever. It's just, I'm doing this because this is what this post on Instagram said I should do, or I'm doing this because it's January 1st, or I'm doing this because I weigh 250 pounds and I want to weigh 200 pounds. Well, what is the actual like ideal weight for you kind of thing? Like, what is your actual education behind the diet or the nutritional goals that you're doing? Is this diet really a healthy diet, or is this kind of one of those facade things that we were talking about earlier on Instagram that's not actually going to work for you? It's not actually healthy. It's not beneficial to your overall health. Are you losing the right kind of weight, or are you losing all of your muscle mass because you're just not eating? I'll consider that probably an eating disorder, right?
Yeah, right. Because anybody can starve themselves and get skinny. I mean, that's like if you're 250 pounds and you just quit eating, your body's going to metabolize itself and you're going to lose weight.
Yeah. And nutrition isn't just about losing weight either. It's about maintaining, but also gaining weight healthy in a lot of ways. Like a lot of lifters, they want to gain mass. They want to gain size, and they're like, how do I do it? I can't tell you how many like 160-pound guys come up to me and ask me like, how do I gain weight, man? I'm like, well, one for me, it was pretty genetic in 23 years of eating like shit, the way I got really like big, but then spent a year of really dedicated to like nutrition and exercise, where now I'm a bit leaner and look better. But for you, like, you need to be eating a certain level of protein in your diet and using carbs and fats to complement it, not work against it, right? The only way you're going to gain size and gain mass is being a caloric surplus. And you can do that in a dirty bulk, or you can do that in a lean, cleaner bulk. And it's just dependent on the individual. But what your goals are and what your motivation behind those behaviors are.
It's funny, I actually had a friend come up to me, and he was just getting into lifting. And I was asking him, I said, so, like, you know, how's your eating? Because he had been doing the lifting thing. It was kind of starting to become a habit. And so he's making good progress with it. I was like, well, how's your eating? Because I don't think he was really gaining much weight. And he said, oh, it's okay. I said, well, I said, you really should focus on protein. Like, as just like a starting, you know, that's probably like
starting point, right?
That's like probably the first thing you want to focus on when you're trying to gain muscle. Like, if you're hitting your protein targets, then you're probably, the rest of them are going to be ballpark in the right range, especially because a lot of people aren't getting enough protein.
A lot of people.
So I said, because he said, well, I've been, like, I added in, like, a protein shake and, like, you know, started making stuff. So it's like, I was like, you should probably aim for about a gram per pound body weight. It's like a, you know, general rule, pretty universal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, okay. So he's like, all right, so I'm about 200 pounds. So I'm like, yeah, so shoot for 200 grams. So he comes back to me, like, a few days later, and he's like, I was nowhere near that. And people just don't realize that, though. They don't realize, they think, oh, like, you know, instead of eating, like, chips, I had, like, some almonds or something. They don't realize, like, to build muscle, like, you really need to take your body outside that comfort zone of how much you're eating, you know. And if you do it the right way, then you have the clean bulk. And if you do it with a lot of extra stuff, that's when you get in the dirtier route.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, I think a lot of people don't understand, you know, what their body is putting out in a day calorically, and they just don't have that concept, because there really is no perfect way to measure. There's no perfect way to measure what goes out. I mean, unless you're hooked up to a machine all day.
Right.
And there is by no means any way close to perfect to measure what goes in. So you just have to learn your body.
Right.
And I eat, like, pretty well. I plan out my meals. I cook them when I'm not hungry, which makes a big difference. And but I'll still make mistakes.
Yeah.
The other day we had a 2:00 meeting at work. It was 2 Wednesdays ago, and somebody brought donuts in. I was like, oh, I haven't had a donut in a while. Ate a donut. Go to the gym at 4:00. Feel like absolute garbage. It's like, I wonder why. It's like, ate a donut like an hour ago.
Why did I
like,
do this to myself?
Yeah. And, like, you just realize it's just a process of making mistakes, self-correcting. So this Wednesday, if somebody brings donuts, you can bet your ass I'm having one, because my lift at 4:00 is way more important than that 3 minutes of satisfaction from stuffing my face. And, like, it just takes realizing that and, like, seeing the importance of that to get past those milestones where you're able to make good decisions for yourself.
Yeah, and that's, like, experiment, and that's so important. That's something I was always super bad at, like, in the earlier stages of my life, was I would be really comfortable with what I knew, and I would not go out of the realms of what I knew to experiment with alternative ways of living life. I think the first time I ever noticed a good interaction with manipulating behavior was when I cut out dairy, right? Yeah. For my whole life, like, I had been, cheese is my favorite thing in the world, cheese and milk, right? And I just thought everyone pooped this way, and that's how they felt after eating cheese and milk. But until I went dairy free for a couple of weeks, I was like, oh, so this is what it feels like to be normal and to be healthy. Okay.
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and I think having that knowledge and that and actually experimenting with what works for me and what doesn't work for me really created that interaction of, okay, I can do this in other places in my life. I can do this in the gym. I can do this in other realms of nutrition. So, like, right now, I started a cut a little over a week ago for just to get ready for the summer. And I definitely already have made mistakes where I cut off too many calories too soon. And so I've been going to bed super hungry, been getting terrible sleep because I'm sleeping on, like, an empty stomach, having crazy cravings that I don't usually have, all because I took too big of a drop too soon. And so then last night, midnight rolls around and I'm, like, starving and having this craving, and I'm like, I haven't had a refeed this week. I don't really do cheat meals, but because I haven't had a refeed, like, how terrible would it be to go get a cheeseburger, right? And so I had this internal debate for a literal hour, and then finally left at 1 a.m. to go get a cheeseburger, but then Wendy's is closed, so I end up at Taco Bell, and then I'm passing at McDonald's like, oh, they're open, and get Taco Bell and a cheeseburger, and then eat like 2,000 calories in the span of 15 minutes at 1 a.m., right?
We've all been there before, man.
But it's also, I don't have a purist view, and so it's not like, oh, I'm waking up in complete shame or and screw the rest of the 11 weeks I have on this cut. No, it's, okay, I'm going to learn. I'm going to up my calories a little bit for this week. I'm going to implement weekly refeeds, and this way I'm not setting myself up to have big moments of 2,000 calories going into my body.
And that's the thing too that I've heard is if you're going to do something like outside of what your goals are, like do something that's worth it. Like if you're craving dessert, like have your favorite dessert.
Yeah.
If you're craving like you don't want to, like, say I'm craving, like, ice cream or something. Like, I don't want to, like, get a crappy donut at work and then still be craving ice cream, because then I'm going to make 2 mistakes instead of 1.
Because it just wasn't even worth it. You're not even satisfied. Right.
So if you're going to go through if you're going to feed these cravings, which isn't, like, a terrible thing.
No.
Just do it with something that is going to satisfy them. You don't want to just push them back a couple days or something. You don't want to just keep elongating these cravings, because that's when you have no chance of sticking to your plan.
Yeah, this is so measurable, and actually, like, you can see this across so many studies, even with addiction, but also with goal setting, is if you look at smokers and you're trying to get people to come off from smoking, you can't just take away the cigarettes from them and expect them to go cold turkey and not smoke for the rest of their life. Right? The measurable and objectively better way to do that is to let them keep their cigarettes. But you're slowly replacing them. You're taking something away and adding with something that also is giving them that reward. And so that's why you see a lot of old smokers eat chips and stuff like that, because they need that physical hand and mouth motion. And so you're kind of manipulating the body at this point of you're getting these rewards, but you're getting them from something else, something that's not quite as unhealthy as this first thing. And eventually, right, there's going to be no more cigarettes, and you're going to be replaced with an alternative behavior. But if you take something completely away and you don't replace it with an alternative behavior, you're setting a person up to, 1, withdrawal, but 2, like, not just go back to their old behavior, but have be reinforced that they need this behavior. And so with food, a lot of people in diets are like complete purist forms. And so, like, you can't have cake anymore, or whatever the diet is, or like you say, I can never do this. Well, you're setting yourself up for that moment when you really, really, really want that thing. And quite frankly, like, it wouldn't be unhealthy for you to have that thing. They have that thing. Not only do they have a little bit of it, they have the whole thing in an unhealthy form, and then a lot of shame comes into it, and they're like, well, I already have the cake, I might as well also have, like, the tub of ice cream kind of thing. And you're really setting people up for failure, rather than, no, like, you really enjoy ice cream? Well, let's make sure you keep having ice cream, but let's work on the amount of times you have ice cream in a week, and then the quantity of ice cream you have in those sittings. And slowly you're making those shorter and shorter and less often, but also they're still having that thing, so they're not left at the end of the week craving ice cream, where they're going to go to the freezer or go to the store and grab a huge tub of it and actually set themselves up for a worse outcome than when they even started.
Right. Yeah, if you're gonna like feed cravings, basically, don't do it with something that's gonna make it worse.
Yeah, but I think there's also a point of what his point is you have to have moderation. Like, you can't be like, I love ice cream, it's like my favorite thing, I love having it, and be like, okay, well, you're doing this diet, you have to lose some weight, you get no ice cream ever. It's like, no, just have like a scoop and then like have a couple other things with it, so you're still full, but you still get the taste of it. Like, you have to have moderation. You can't completely cut things out, because that's when people binge. You're like, I haven't had ice cream in literally 2 months. I'm gonna buy the half gallon at Meijer of Scooperman ice cream and eat the whole thing in one sitting. Not like I've ever done that. But.
Yeah. Oddly detailed.
I forget. It was a bodybuilder from like because I was watching the Netflix special about Ronnie Coleman.
Yeah.
It was one of the other bodybuilders talking. I forget what his name was though. He was one of the guys that was like top 4 or 5 and Mr. Olympia at the time.
Okay.
Like Jay Cutler or something.
It wasn't Jay Cutler. It was
Was
before.
it Juan Morel?
No, but he was saying that he craved pizza so much when he was cutting.
Mm-hmm.
He would eat pizza, and then before he would swallow it, he would spit it out.
Wow.
So like that's obviously like to the extreme of, because I mean, when it's your livelihood, I guess it's a little different story.
That's so extreme.
But
yeah.
yeah, it's
I mean, you're
just
talking about
funny.
an extreme athlete in an extreme niche of like the
Right.
hyper most
Yeah,
biggest
the
dudes in
1%
world.
of the lifters, right?
Yeah, I forget. I'd have to look it up who it was, but
That's
I just found that funny because that's
an eating disorder, right?
yeah,
there.
that's not that's body. What does they call it? Body dysmorphia. Or?
I mean,
Well, I don't know if that's body dysmorphia. Body dysmorphia is like what you see in the mirror is not what everyone else sees. Like
Right.
you view yourself as never being big enough, never having like big enough quads or whatever it is. And when in reality, it's like, dude, your quads are literally 32 inches. Like you need to stop.
Well, I think a lot of like those bodybuilders would have that. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
of course.
obviously if you're
Yeah.
that driven to, but there has to be some inward perspective of what you are.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I think it's setting people up for success at the end of the day. Like when it comes to nutrition and linking like what you're putting in your body with how the output that you're then having the next day and the next week and the next month is really a slow process. It's not that snap of a finger, your body looks like this, or snap of a finger, you feel like this. I know one study that I really held close to my grasp when I was writing a paper in psychoneuroimmunology was a study done with manipulating nutritional intake, and the control group was just constant, like pretty relatively unhealthy diet, but then you had the healthy diet group. And then it wasn't until I think it was like week 7 or week 8 where they could objectively measure a difference in the feelings of like when they would wake up in the morning and their output of that day. Right, that's a long time. That's 2 months,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of people have a really hard time with instant gratification as it is, and
Yeah.
right. So if you're asking somebody to wait 2 months to actually reap benefits, you could say, or start to even see the reaping of benefits, I think it's a really hard. That's the hardest part for me of like telling somebody like, listen. You give it some time, you're going to see results. In the gym, if you give it some time, you're going to see results. If you eat right, give it some time, you're going to see results. And what's so important about that, or so hard about that, I should say, is I've seen those results, so it's easy for me to say that. And until someone actually experiences that for themselves, they're just kind of like, you keep saying, wait, how long do I got to wait, you know? Like,
Right.
I've done it for 6 weeks, I see no results, well, screw this kind of thing. I'm going to move on to something else.
Right, and I think that goes back to making those little choices. And if you document where you started and stuff, it's easy to make those little choices, and you get partway up the ladder and you look back down and you say, oh, okay, like, yeah, I have come a long way. And that just empowers you to want to keep making that climb because you see what you're able to do when you focus on something.
Awesome. That's a great way to round it out, I think.
Yeah. You got any other thoughts, Noah? You're the expert here.
Yeah. Anything you want to leave the people with? Anything to take away? To take one thing away from today's conversation, what do you want it to be?
I mean, you guys just love putting me on the spot. I think the thing that we really circled around almost through the course of the whole conversation was intention of behaviors, but also the control you have of your own life with those behaviors. You have control of completely reshaping the direction of where you're going in life, and how you feel, how you look, but also how you operate and how you wake up every day and how your relationships are going to come forth. Simple behavior modifications of what you're putting in your body and how you're exerting your body throughout the week and how you're letting that body heal and rest. And so that's pretty much, I think, the scope of this episode was intention of behavior and you in the control of those behaviors that you have that a lot of people think are outside of their control.
Yeah. Awesome.
I like it.
Got anything, Evan?
No, I think he just said it. I mean, he's the expert here. I just wanted to pick his brain a little bit. So I'm
Self-proclaimed expert.
I'm super glad you guys were able to invite me back on with Noah and go through this conversation. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming out. All right, that's a wrap.